today and sharing this insight on these topics. Thank you very much. Now moving on, as the COP30 climate conference prepares to begin on November 10th in Belém, Brazil's Minister of Indigenous Peoples, Sonia Guajajara, has emphasized the crucial role of indigenous communities in the fight against climate change. Minister Guajajara declared that without indigenous peoples, there is no future for humanity. She, a member of the Guajajara Tenetehara ethnic group and the first person to lead the ministry created by President Lula da Silva in 2023, said she expects this to be the most inclusive COP yet for indigenous participation. Let's listen to what she has said.
Comprovadamente, a presença indígena, seja em território demarcado ou não, é garantia de água limpa, de biodiversidade protegida, de alimentação sem veneno, de floresta em pé, e tudo isso é o que a humanidade precisa para continuar existindo. Portanto, a gente diz, né, sem os povos indígenas, sem essas vozes, não há futuro para a humanidade. Com certeza, uma COP na Amazônia precisa considerar as vozes indígenas, das comunidades tradicionais, né, de todas as pessoas que sempre tiveram muita dificuldade de chegar onde a COP acontece. Então, eu acho que o presidente Lula está muito comprometido realmente, né, e está construindo todos esses debates e esses diálogos para encontrar essas soluções para sair da dependência de combustíveis fósseis, né? Ele tem consciência de que o Brasil precisa fazer a transição energética, né, fazer toda essa transição de forma justa.
Now for this discussion, we welcome Desmond Majekodunmi. He's a political and environmental activist, joins us live from Lagos. Thank you very much, Desmond, for joining us again. Good to see you. Desmond, looking at this, what role should governments play in ensuring that indigenous communities have equal representation and decision-making power in international climate negotiations such as the upcoming COP30? And how can indigenous knowledge be effectively integrated into global climate policies?
Yes, the fact that the indigenous populations have not been incorporated very much over the years into the decision-making of various governments, let alone when world governments come together in this conference of the parties that they do on a yearly basis. It's very disappointing because traditionally the keepers of the lands all over the world have been the indigenous people. It's just until the massive industrialization and the mechanization of various systems that allowed us to have a much bigger impact over land, over nature, you know, for our agricultural practices or for whatever, you know, massive bulldozers and cutting machines and so on. We're able to clear a lot more land and do what we wanted to do with it, which in a lot of cases was mechanized agriculture, which does bring very high yield, but at a cost. And I think this is something that India learned a long time ago and didn't allow to penetrate too deeply into her systems. So the keeping indigenous people, you know, out of the conversation was not a very wise move. And that's why bringing them right into it in Brazil, where you do have still quite a large community of indigenous people that are maintaining the forest, is very, very wise indeed. And when we say maintaining the forest, they are, especially the forest dwellers in that particular location and a few other locations like in Africa as well. They, over the years, over the centuries, they've developed a way of appreciating very much the need to live in harmony with nature, that they are part of nature, not apart. And this shows itself in so many ways. Their hunting practices, for instance, I know here in Africa, the indigenous people in days gone by, they would only hunt animals at a specific time, not during the time when because there's a gestation period time, there's a time normally with deers and all those sort of larger animals where they actually bring out their offspring, and the hunting would not be at that time in order not to slaughter the mothers and the little young deers and so on. They timed it very, very, very well. They never overcut
Yes.
certain areas. Even if they would cut down the forest for the use of the wood, it wouldn't be too much. And also, even when they did a little bit of burning, it was done in a very gentle manner. That is, they cut, and then within like a week, they'd burn. And what would happen with that burn is that just the leaves and the little twigs from the trees or the branches of the trees that they'd cut would get burnt, which would be nice for the soil because you get the ash going into the soil, but it wouldn't put too much heat into the soil, so it didn't negatively impact on the biodiversity within the soil, which is so important for your agricultural produce. You need to have the worms and the other insects there who are aerating the soil, who are ensuring that the soil is actually fertilized. So they did this in a very gentle sort of way, and it gave them the bigger branches to be used for firewood and what have you. Again, a classic example of how the indigenous people were living in pretty good harmony with nature until the machinery came along and until the pressure came from the people who wanted to maximize the yield from the land and wanted to make more profit, and they were sidelined. And what has been going on in Brazil has been particularly horrendous, particularly bad. Massive amounts of indigenously maintained forests just bulldozed away. And you know what for? Animal husbandry, which again is another lesson that we could learn from India, because I do believe that the Indian priority is not for slaughtering cows to put meat on the table.
Yes, indeed. Always pleasure learning from you, Desmond. Thank you for highlighting the prospects and contribution and traditions of indigenous traditions in maintaining harmony with the forest and nature. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news. The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration has grounded all MD-11 planes pending inspections after a crash this week that has killed at least 14 people in Kentucky. The FAA has issued an emergency directive following the incident where a left engine and pylon detached during takeoff. UPS and FedEx, which operate MD-11 fleets, have complied with the order. The FAA expects comprehensive engine and pylon inspections before allowing planes to fly again. Investigators are looking into the maintenance history of the aircraft, which had undergone repairs before the accident. The cause of the crash is still under investigation. Now for this discussion, we welcome Vandana Singh. She's an aviation expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Vandana, for joining us again. Good to see you. Vandana, can you tell us if this kind of engine and pylon detaching accident, is this a common occurrence? Vandana, you might be muted here. I'm sorry. No, we cannot hear you over here. Let me...
You read me now?
Yes, perfect.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Azuma, for having me on your show.
Thank you.
First of all, McDouglas 11 freighters, this equipment is a very sturdy, it's a very good equipment. It's been operating for many, many years now. The one in question, Azuma, was 24 years old, of course, nearing time of retirement. And the engine or the pylon detaching, pylon you could imagine like a bridge that is attaching the engine to the aircraft, to the machine as such, is something which is not common. So obviously in this particular case, since this equipment already went through rigorous maintenance, as I read at Texas, it is surprising to see that this detachment happened of the left engine and the pylon. And again, coming to the question mark of maintenance, it is very good, and it is in the national interest and international interest that the FAA has grounded the entire McDouglas series. So all in all, 55 MD-11s that have been grounded between FedEx and UPS that operates this freighter. And I believe it's the right thing to do till the investigation as to why the engine, the left engine and the pylon detached during takeoff. Of course, there were only 3 crew on board, and there were warning bells that they were getting, but we do not really know what happened inside because nobody is there to really tell us exactly what was the cause of this crash. But this particular MD-11 had gone through maintenance, rigorous maintenance, in fact, at Texas, and had just come back to its station. Having said that, Azuma, I have worked very much with MD-11 freighters coming from the this sphere of aviation. And earlier, Lufthansa Cargo in 2025 itself, this year, bid farewell to its last MD-11 fleet and retired it. And KLM Royal Dutch Airlines was operating what you call combi freighters, which is passenger plus cargo load. And they retired the entire McDouglas fleet in 2014. So it's high time that UPS and FedEx were told to ground their equipment till investigation was done. It's an aging fleet, and it needs to be checked as to what exactly was the cause of this particular accident. Over to you, Azuma.
Yes. Building on that, Vandana, as you mentioned, and I didn't know that personally, this particular aircraft was 24 years old. So how significant is the role of maintenance oversight and repair documentation in preventing such mechanical failures? And 24 years old, so probably there are other aircrafts in this world where this broader challenges of maintaining aging aircraft fleets lie. So what are the challenges?
Thank you, Azuma. That's a very nice question to ask.
Thank you.
Firstly, to let you know that as far as MD-11, McDouglas 11 series is concerned, these freighters take a payload of about 91 tons, which is, I'll be a little bit technical here. So 26 main deck pallets and 10 lower deck, or what we call LD3 pallets. And since this equipment, I already mentioned, mainly flown by major carriers like UPS, like FedEx, like Lufthansa Cargo, like KLM Royal Dutch Airlines, and a little few more carriers, more or less everybody has retired this fleet now because it's come of age, one. Two, because of more fuel efficient freighters that have come into the international space, such as the 767s and the 777s. So these are more fuel efficient, better for long haul flights, better for carrying the cargo loads, freighter loads up and down. And the McDouglas 11 has already been replaced by major carriers, as I mentioned. And it was high time that UPS and FedEx were told to ground them. So they have almost grounded, let's say, 5 to 6% of their fleet, which is 55. All of McDouglas 11 aircrafts have been grounded. Firstly, as I mentioned, aging aircraft. Secondly, as I mentioned, more importance, like you mentioned, towards maintenance. Now, when this equipment in question, which crashed with 3 crew on board and 9 on ground, with 14 people who have lost their lives, it is a very, very serious concern because it had undergone maintenance at Texas before this. And this equipment, as I told you, was almost a quarter of what should I say, 24 years old, so
Yes.
aging aircraft, and therefore the necessity to ground it and investigate by the NTSB as well as FAA and check what was the cause behind it. But in my personal view, MD-11 freighters need to be retired absolutely now. They have done their job, they have done a good job, and it's now the time for retirement. Over to you, Azuma.
Yes, indeed. With that, I would like to thank Vandana Singh for joining us as an aviation expert and sharing that insight from New Delhi. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Spain. In Spain, hundreds have gathered in Madrid to mark the 50th anniversary of dictator Francisco Franco's death. The demonstration has been organized by the far-right group Núcleo Nacional, was held under the slogan Blood, Soil, Tradition. Participants displayed Nazi symbols and carried banners reading White Lives Matter. The rally has drawn widespread condemnation from political leaders and human rights groups who warn of the growing visibility of extremist movements in Spain. Let's listen into what was said.
El lema Las vidas blancas importan, en el que se busca hacer mención y un recuerdo a todos aquellos europeos que han muerto por culpa de las políticas de inmigración sin ningún tipo de control, desmesuradas, que ejercen y que imponen desde más arriba, aún en contra del beneficio del propio pueblo. El 20 de noviembre se cumplen los 50 años de la muerte de Franco y también de la muerte de José Antonio Primo de Rivera. Creo que a Franco hay que mirarlo con perspectiva. Tenemos que aprender a mirar de una forma objetiva los hechos históricos y no simplemente creernos el relato oficial sin constatarlo y sin estudiarlo por nuestros propios medios. A más de uno le sorprendería y se daría cuenta que por lo menos en cuestión de números Franco tan malo no era, por lo menos era más eficaz que muchos de los políticos actuales, si bien nosotros no somos franquistas.
That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news.